Hi there, welcome to a focused video on how to deal with a deep, severe freeze, a severe episode which is prolonged and has lasted for some time. This video explains how things got to that point, the causes behind it, and as well the recovery process, the healing naturally at a slow, steady pace. Join me today as I explain each part bit by bit. Welcome to anyone that may be watching live during the premiere, and for those watching on catch-up, what I do want to say is, first and foremost, big shout out to anyone that has come across this video and has decided to watch, whether it be to learn, to simply listen, to relax. You know, if there's anyone who has these symptoms, dealing with certain struggles and those on a bigger scale, you should be proud of yourself for making the steps, trying to heal and considering watching this video. It's all a big positive. Let's acknowledge that first of all. And secondly, this channel, this video, this space and area, you don't have to explain yourself. If you just want to sit back and listen in, you can. If at any point it gets too much, you're more than welcome to pause the video, take a little break, or even return back later or a day later when watching this, catching up on it, okay? So, whoever, such as with these struggles, you don't have to explain yourself. You don't owe anyone anything in this moment. During this time, whilst watching, this is the space to just relax and consider certain methods. But understandably, before the recovery, it's important to acknowledge the struggles, the battle, almost like a mountain, climbing it, and for some people maybe reclimbing it. This is the thing. Previously, I did a focused video analysing the aspect of a deep freeze where a person withdraws, for example, as a means of a trauma response. But whilst that can occur, the length of time does vary. Today, we're focusing in on a deeper level, which means lasting longer. And the longer it lasts, for some people, it could feel a lot more difficult to break out of, to break free, to break loose, to be oneself again, to feel things once again, to be able to reach out to people. So that's the focus of today. But what I do want to make very clear, for people who may be going through PTSD, trauma, some who may have survivor's guilt, people who may just simply have depression, this video targets all the areas holistically. I'm doing it on a deeper level today, but it will apply to less severe situations. And if anyone is interested on the previous video that I did, as in understanding a deep freeze, the causes, the true symptoms behind it, I'll provide a link top right corner where the eye symbol is up there. It'll be in the psychology playlist attached with other different videos of sorts. So just want to make that clear. There's a variety. But today we're looking at a severe freeze. Now, what is that exactly? It's the same actions, the self-defense mechanism, the mind kicking in, where it withdraws from people physically and even emotionally, creating a space and a distance, creating some kind of bubble of familiarity, as in the person with the symptoms has experienced things like this before and how they've dealt with it and coped, mainly alone possibly. but in certain circumstances, the intensity of it can push an individual back into a corner or into a quiet room to regroup, regather the thoughts, to cool down, to handle and deal with the situation at hand. And as said, on a smaller scale, it might not take that long to recover from. It might not be too noisy inside, but still the self-defense mechanisms are freezing the body, the mind, and emotions. It's like everything has been put on hold. So like when dealing with relationships and friendships and making progress there, going through stages of life and certain milestones, when hit with a freeze response, possibly by triggers around, stress, factors, responsibilities, it can all get too much. So the mind and body retreats into a safe space. But in doing so, that period of time, externally, it comes across as if they are okay or just getting on, getting by, but internally, they're surviving, scratching and clawing to try and survive. On an internal, deeper level, there is a lot going on, understandably. When it comes to it easing and pulling out of that isolation, depending on the length of time, it can be scary, it can be daunting, going back into day-to-day normal encounters or returning back to normal routines. And that's where we focus in on today. The causes of these freezes can intensify, and that could be by the level of stress that one is going through, the level of trauma that one has experienced, a recent trigger which is bigger than previous ones, causing a deeper freeze response. It could even be a flashback to a previous memory, a past unresolved problem. But just as equal in importance, you know what else could possibly cause a severe episode, a severe freeze response? And that is when dealing with back-to-back episodes in which the last one an individual had gone through, which may have not been as severe, but it was still bad, that upon returning back, freezing, thawing out, coming back into normal consciousness, that if they didn't have much time to recover from that physically and mentally, if they were then in the presence of a new trigger, new stressors, factors about, it could have pushed them back into a deeper, more severe freeze. And that's partially because the mind and the body is still raw from feeling and dealing with the last episode. So without that recovery time, the body is still somewhat vulnerable and the mind is still raw. So when it's fed with more triggers and more factors, it can compile on top of one another and stack, because the body and the mind internally has been dealing with a battle inside. That can be really exhausting and it can tire a person out. So when they do finally recover and get a bit better, they're not 100%. They're still in a recovery process. In terms of their mind, their feelings, they may have come out of that bubble. They may be around others once again, but they are somewhat, well, they may possibly be fragile, still recovering from the energy consumed from that previous episode. Similar to if you had the flu, an illness, if you had pneumonia, where it just takes it out of you, dehydrated, maybe a little bit lightheaded, still a bit achy, pains and strains, all kinds of feelings like that. That illness inside, like a physical one, can take a toll on the body as the body is fighting back against it. So when the storm eases, then it's the recovery process of regaining back that energy and that stamina. It's like the same with a person that goes through episodes, right? So, just briefly categorized, an individual who has an episode, a form of a deep freeze, a freeze response, if that lasts for days, a few days, maybe up to a week or so, that can be a form of a struggle, maybe more so a wobble. It's short-term, a short-term episode, but still intense, possibly inside for the individual when dealing with intrusive thoughts, worry, panic, feeling destabilized, the uncertainty, anxiety, all kinds of emotions mixed into one. And of course, the different triggers that may have caused it. For example, PTSD, it could be a memory, something from the past, and it's just creeped in. It could be through going to bed and having a certain dream, and it's caused triggers. So it's left the body and the mind feeling unbalanced and worried. And that can last for a few days, maybe a week. And then once regulating the body and mind, coming out of it and finally being okay, stabilizing, and then being able to integrate and interact with people. However, if there is a follow-up, whether it's back-to-back close together or if there's space in between, but there was a major trigger, a traumatic event, an intrusive thought more intense than the previous one, the next episode, another episode, could last longer, maybe for a few weeks, 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks. That form of episode can be a form of struggling beyond bad. Now, when it comes to struggling beyond bad, it's starting reaching a mental capacity, a mental load, and physically, where the social battery has reached a limit. The emotional mindset has reached full capacity, where it has to pull away because it can't deal with things around, that they may not be able to deal with familiar faces and even strangers, even colleagues, even clients, because it's just got too much. Almost like having to pull the plug and take time out, withdrawing and isolating, not to feel 100% better, but for 2 reasons. For example, to prevent, in their mind, to prevent their darkness from consuming anyone or hurting anyone, a selfless act. And then the other option being just simply reducing the noise. Them withdrawing isn't going to fix them immediately, but it's going to help ease the noise and the fullness in the head. Sometimes it's like a flight mechanic, almost running away from thoughts or feelings, or running away from environments and triggers to get away, to try and calm down and just spend however long that's needed to deal with a current episode and fight through that storm. So when it lasts for a few weeks, that can be a form of struggling a lot more than the previous days to a week episode. Now, when it comes to a severe frozen state, as said, that can be triggered by back-to-back episodes. So with the multiple week episode or low episode, that would have used up a lot of energy and focus and stamina in a way, where the person dealing with the symptoms and trying to cope, there's a lot going on in the head, a lot of thoughts and memories and feelings emotionally, whilst already at full capacity, and energy being low, mentally possibly feeling low as a symptom. It's a bit of a paradox. The head is full with thoughts and feels a lot, but at the same time, the body and mind is reacting by feeling maybe a little numb or starting to disassociate as a self-protective measure. However, the person is still struggling. When they finally come out of that, when they unfreeze, when they shake it off, they find a way through. Still raw, maybe a little bit vulnerable. Anything happens in that space of time, or they're just de-energized from that multiple week episode, what can happen is a re-trigger or falling back into that cycle again. And if it's back to back, it's more likely to trigger a longer period and spell, and more so because the last episode, which was the longest one, it was also the most energy time consuming one. So it used up a lot more resources internally, leaving the individual maybe starved of oxygen, metaphorically speaking, starved of interaction with other people as a means of the trauma response. So when reintegrating back into circles, familiar faces, or even environments, it can be overwhelming at times, and there might be re-triggers. If there's not enough time to recover from the previous low episode, the individual may fall back into a much deeper frozen state, which means it may last much longer than the previous 2 episodes. And for the person that's going through that, it can be quite a scary time, because no matter how long an individual has dealt with symptoms like that and other struggles, it's not always linear. The same with healing and recovery, it's not always in a straight line. It can be 2 steps forwards and 1 step back. And sometimes the 1 step back is more consuming and feels like going backwards in progress, even if more progress has been made. That's what it can do on the mind and the feelings around it. So when dealing with a severe episode, which may feel worse inside and more overwhelming, and a longer period in dealing with it, a longer period in staying quiet and keeping away from people, the reason why that can be hard and scary for someone is because when they do start feeling a little bit better, then they're dealing with a second intense wave of emotions, such as when they start feeling again. They've come out of that numbing effect. They've come back from that disassociation period, and now they may feel to blame. They may feel responsible. They may feel possibly a strong wave of guilt and shame because of them disappearing from other people, going quiet without giving an explanation or an answer. And a severe deep freeze episode, which may have lasted months, for the person who's struggling, can seem like a mountain of a task to even consider trying to explain where they've been, what they've done, what's been going on, how have they felt, what's been going on inside. The worries and the fears of returning back and having to look people in the face and answer to them, whether that be apologizing or just explaining themselves. That worry and fear of, will whoever, friends, family, loved ones, partners, still be there, still be available? Will the door still be open? Those internal worries inside of feeling, I've ruined it, self-blame. And, for some people that may have gone through trauma in the past, who was blamed for things when it wasn't their fault, that could loop in their mind in the present, feeling everything is their fault, when in reality it's not. But when they're starting to feel things again after a long period of not, it can come with a strong emotional wave. Just like an individual who may be overly loving, if they've spent months or years being unloved, it's like when things finally do come about and happen, instead of just giving it 50% or 100%, they'll be giving 200, 500%. Well, that applies the same way for an individual that has just disassociated and disconnected, shutting the world out. When they finally let the world back in, they see everything, they hear everything, all those senses being in touch with one another and the environment. But then the realization of how much time has passed by. What are people doing? Where are they at in life? Have they forgotten me? Are they still present? They're like the thoughts and the considerations a survivor may go through, the different waves of guilt, waves of shame, feeling bad about the whole situation. And understandably, it can be harder for people who may have friends, best friends, friendship groups, families, even a relationship, physically, digitally, wherever. The more people an individual has in their life, the more people they have to explain themselves to in giving an answer, an explanation, apologizing if they feel they need to or have to. It can add almost like a lead weight on their shoulders and chest. It can almost suffocate them in a way with such a huge wave of guilt because they feel responsible. They feel like they've messed things up when at the end of the day, they're not to blame for their own struggles. That's the thing. A person that goes through low episodes and severe freezes, it's not their fault that they're going through that. It's not quite their fault that their mind goes into a form of a self-protective defense mechanism. It's just instinct, it's nature, it's learned over time, evolution, to protect oneself from danger, dangerous environments and possible people, or simply triggers from the past. However, for the one with the symptoms, they're not going to consider that, or they may not have the capacity to think in different ways. Such as with guilt, if someone has previously gone through the loss of another, a familiar face, a loved one, if someone has a form of survivor's guilt, that can overlap with the recovery process. Survivor's guilt, even OCD. These are extra factors and struggles which a person may have, separately. But when dealing with a freeze episode, a long-term one, OCD and survivor's guilt can prolong that recovery. It can reinforce and enhance the strong feelings of worry, concern, guilt, shame, and feeling that they don't deserve to return back to people they love, to return back to people that care a lot about them. It's almost like a form of self-punishment because they feel guilty for what they've done, even though their struggles isn't something they asked for or anticipated. It came on unexpectedly. Like a panic attack in a way, it can happen unexpectedly. And such as with the multiple week low episode, then back to back with a multiple month long episode, that was a form of a system crash. The mind, the emotions internally, an internal deep collapse. Like the body, mind couldn't carry that weight anymore. Exhausted, tired. Sometimes that could be enhanced by masking, pretending everything is okay when it's not. And that weight gets very heavy with time. Masking is a form of performance for the sake of protecting themselves and maybe others around them. But it uses up a lot of energy. So when that energy does drop to baseline or lower, they can't keep it up anymore. So some of that can trigger a form of an episode, and back-to-back episodes can be extremely wearing on the body and mind, leading to a system crash, almost like a computer disconnecting, needing time to cool off. And that can last for some time. And it can last much longer when dealing with OCD and survivor's guilt. Whether a person has both or just one, it's just extra, obstacles, which makes it feel harder to climb and overcome that mountain. But the reality is, there is still a way and there is still hope. It just takes time and a level of focus. What's important to acknowledge is, and this can apply in general in life, for a person that goes through the symptoms and episodes, and even for the people that know of someone that is going through it, it's that internal versus external battle, that physical versus mental battle. On the outside, externally, how they present themselves, how they show up, or if they're absent. Physically, they may just not have the energy or the want or the desire to do things. They want to keep to themselves, stay in familiar environments to weather the storm, to try and contain themselves and all the noise going on, more so inside. That externally, in general, they could appear quiet or nonchalant, not showing much emotion if they're numb, if they've disconnected. But whilst on the outside they may have disconnected from the world, internally there is still a lot of noise going on, silent and invisible. But to that person, it could be very chaotic or messy. That could consist of struggles and worries and triggers, symptoms, PTSD, trauma, depression, low episodes, all kinds of reactions. But it can also incorporate still being internally connected to people around them, that whilst they withdraw from people, their mind, their heart, in some way, never stops thinking of certain people in their life. But to the outside world, looking in on that person with the symptoms, it would be hard to tell. And that's because it's an internal battle, and externally it may not be shown and it may not be clear. So just because a person is silent doesn't mean to say that they don't care. They may care even more by their actions internally and what they're feeling. They just may not be able to show it in the moment and onwards. So when it comes to a deep, severe freeze, slowly thawing out, becoming aware again, but then dealing with that wave of guilt, possible shame, feeling to blame for it, and worried how people will react when they return or reach out. That period can be just as difficult, just as quiet on the outside, physically unable to say things, losing the voice. Yet inside, they are screaming to be saved or screaming to themselves to snap out of it. They're screaming their heart out to maybe a person that they care about. But on the outside, it's silent. That's why it can come across as quite complex, and sometimes it can be hard for the outside world to accept and understand what a person with these symptoms is going through. So, with that being said, in regard to the methods, in regard to the treatment, I've got it present, okay? So before we continue, if you want to take just a little drink, just to rehydrate yourself, okay? You just do a bit of breathing first of all. Okay. So it's important to acknowledge that the process and the steps in recovery can face a big obstacle, and it's also a symptom of a deep freeze, and that's the term Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day is like a routine stuck in the rut, performing the same small-scale task every single day, but it being like a cycle where it's hard to break out from. It's like a form of autopilot. Wake up, get up, eat food, do certain chores, if possible, do work or whatever, then return back, eat food, maybe have a wash, go to sleep, and repeat. And whilst that's going on, whilst to some people in life, that could be what some do on a daily basis, for an individual going through a deep, severe freeze or a long freeze episode, those actions, not only are they repetitive, but it's almost like monotone. There's no change, there's no variety, and there might not be much feeling behind it. So beside the OCD and survivor's guilt, as in putting the person off from reaching out or freeing themselves, they may also be stuck physically and mentally because of Groundhog Day. Waking up, going on a same walk, driving the same route, taking the same directions. That repetitive action can become ingrained in the mind and almost conditioned in such a way. If it was to be paired with a person that might have OCD, because it's all about rituals and routines, even if it comes across as far-fetched or unnecessary to them, it's necessary to maintain a level of control, which means a form of stability and safety for their own personal peace of mind. So they adapt through a deep frozen state. Going through Groundhog Day, as boring and emotionless as it could be for some people, it makes them feel somewhat safe by repeating the same task over and over again. However, possibly deep inside, they might be screaming. They want to break out of it. They don't want to wake up the same and do the same every single day. They may want to do different activities, different chores, maybe hang out, reach out to someone that they care about. But the weight, the routine, the what-ifs takes over, consumes the mind, and pushes them back. And as they're trying to climb out of it, metaphorically, it might feel like they're sinking in quicksand. Every movement and attempt that they make to try and wiggle out, it pulls them back, but drags them down more each time they make the attempt to escape. So it could get to a point where the mind or body either gives up or decides to just continue on as things are, as a new norm. But it shouldn't have to be that way. A person shouldn't deserve to be put through that. But it is hard, or it might feel hard for them to consider any other possibility. What's important is the cycle needs to be broken. Something needs to be changed. It's easy saying that. When a person's going through it, it's another matter. And that's why it's important to make tiny little changes, if possible. Not sudden, not big leaps, but tiny, subtle changes, which deregulates the routine, but stabilizes the mind. If it's slow, and the original routine is still predictable, changes are being made undercover without it being too drastic or too obvious. If it was too obvious, it could lead to a disruption in the mind, deregulated thoughts, swinging from emotions, and being deregulated can cause triggers of worry or panic. And if a person has OCD, when a routine isn't fulfilled or completed, it can lead to either panic attacks, worry, anxiety, thinking that control is being lost, could inadvertently trigger past memories of loss of control. So it's like, got to be very careful with making the changes. Now, of course, if an individual was in such a deep freeze and a deep form of Groundhog Day, they might not be able to make the changes themselves. So if there was a friend, if there was a partner, if there was a family member that was present and around that were able to apply these little changes to that person with the symptoms, that can go a long way as well. And the methods applied to both the person with the symptoms and an individual that may know of someone going through it. Small changes and small actions, small thoughts and considerations, and small changes to the senses, the ears, the eyes, the nose, the taste, the lips, and all of that. So Groundhog Day could consist of waking up, maybe brushing teeth or having a wash, eating some breakfast, maybe sitting down or getting changed, doing some work, going out somewhere to complete task or do some chores. But it might be repetitive that every single day. So a way to disrupt all of that without it actually causing any trouble or problems for the person waking up with the symptoms or an individual that's present that knows of someone going through it is to make these little changes, not all in one go, but just considerations here and there, and maybe to add to it. These little changes, even if it's just one change, and keeping that one change for a few days and then switching it up with something else. Switching and changing it up very lightly and briefly can reintroduce the body and the mind to feeling things again, being introduced to different senses, which positively triggers sensory reactions and feelings and sensations within, which may even trigger a previous positive memory of themselves, who they are, almost like relearning who they are, with no discredit. An individual that has physical injuries where they struggle with mobility and then they've got to slowly learn how to walk again. For a person that's gone through a deep freeze, it's like slowly learning how to feel things again and doing it in such a way that it's not rushed, so then it doesn't lead to going backwards in progress. Just like when a person's trying to walk again, they're not rushed into it, they go through a very slow process and it's regulated and it's systematic. There's a structure to it, learning and being introduced, reintroduced to familiar things. So to break out of Groundhog Day, when waking up in the morning, instead of brushing the teeth first, have a shower instead. Or instead of having a shower first, brush the teeth first. Just changing the pattern up a little bit kind of creates a bit more variety in a person's life. And it still gives them the choice and free will to still tick everything off the list, just in a slightly different order. Another form could be if the person has enough strength and is able to, when having a wash of some sort or a shower, instead of using really warm water, for example, use lukewarm water. A slight change in temperature can become like a new feeling and experience for that person that's in a deep rut. Whilst granted, they may have had colder showers in the past, that sudden temperature change can be a bit of a temperature shock to the mind, breaking that cycle, still performing the same task, but with a different variety, a different variable which is being changed or challenging the mind in how it feels. Because when stuck in Groundhog Day, feeling the same feeling every single day, so when having a shower, which would normally be expected to be warm, if it's cold water, it can temporarily shock the body and mind so it feels something different for once. It might even bring back a sense of familiarity, as in, used to have these showers with this temperature. It triggers a positive memory. It reminds them of who they are, what they may enjoy or what they once did, and that it's not lost. Even if it's just one little change and it's only done for a few days, it's a start, right? So temperature change can shock the body. It can change the patterns a little bit without causing too much of a setback. And as well, as for the mind, the brain, the polyvagal part, the nervous system, having a different temperature change, wash, shower can shock the body so it can adapt to different temperatures. And kind of like when a person is in a trance, hypnotized, when there's a break in a pattern or a loud noise or a sound, it can snap them out of that trance. Or maybe, in a better way of applying it, meditation, yoga. You're in a deep yoga, meditation, breathing, eyes closed, but then if there was a sudden temperature change or a slight noise, it can wake the person up, can't it? In that circumstance, you wouldn't want to be woken up because you're in a nice relaxing state doing a certain activity and hobby. But for a person who's going through Groundhog Day, who's in a repetitive cycle, they need to feel something. They may want to feel different and experience different factors. So if there's a change in temperature, it could wake them up temporarily. So they start feeling again and remembering good times and things that they like and enjoy. Now, when it comes to breakfast, eating the same meal every single day or something like that, maybe changing the food up or simply changing the drink from a coffee to a tea or from a coffee to a fruit juice, a different type of drink which has sensory triggers which can wake up the body and the mind, taste buds, by drinking something sweeter or more bitter, by eating food which could be a bit more tangy or savoury, depending on what they have for breakfast and consume. Changes like that still fulfill the patterns of must eat to survive and continuing that. But by trying different food or a different drink on a very small scale, it welcomes the body and the mind to new experiences or being reintegrated to what they used to do. Whether they're in a position to be able to do it all themselves or if there was a partner, a supportive friend present who is able to provide that area of a different drink, a different little dessert, whatever it is, just so they have the choice and they get to experience new things or get to return back to what they once did and may have enjoyed. Not that all these things have to be changed on day one, but they can be slowly introduced bit by bit. Now, when it comes to doing chores or tasks or work related, wherever that may be, for example, going to a location to get task done, if possible, and only if possible. If by a certain mode of transport taking a different route, so visually you get a different change, they get to see it visually different, because to them, they may be very used to seeing the same house, the same turning point, the same shops, the same passerbys and locals and the same sky, the same lighting. But if it was changed up slightly to go a different route to a desired location or a place that they had to be, needed to go to, changing the route can change the visual sense. It's like introducing a different story. Instead of reading the same book over and over again and knowing what to expect, by choosing a different book with a slightly different story, you're getting to experience and be reintroduced to different places. Of course, it's got to be done carefully, because with changes of routes and directions, that can come the risk of panic or loss of control. It's got to be done very carefully. Maybe on a more simple scale to start things off. If there's ever a time, a moment to break free from everything, to simply go on a short walk, even if it means going on the same walk, the same path, the same route, just to visually feel more alert of the surrounding and physically more grounded with, the presence and the environment that they're in, and if they're surrounded by nature too, if possible. Little changes like that. Or if an individual was possibly working but from home, to spend maybe around lunchtime or at some point have a little break, 10, 15 minutes maybe, to go outside, go on a walk, or go outside in the garden if they have one, just to look around, to get just a change of visual scenery, to break the cycle. Because that's the thing with Groundhog Day. All the senses, ears, hearing, eyes, vision, nose, scent, smell, mouth, tongue, taste buds, taste. When those different senses are introduced to a slightly different variable of doing the same activity, it can it can awaken them to new feelings, or almost like, in a way, brought back to life the way they want to be. Little subtle changes, reminders and prompts in a way. So, as for feeling and touch, using a slightly different towel to dry oneself off, having a colder shower to shock the body a little bit and be more in touch and more grounded with that, almost like reality check briefly. Drinking something different, eating something sweeter or savoury to challenge the taste buds, almost breaking out of that norm, breaking out of that rut, escaping from it, even if it's only temporary, to feel things once again. The changes to the sensory systems get the opportunity to feel, to taste, to hear, to see things differently for a change, which can wake up the mind in some ways, because these senses are connected to the brain, the mind itself. So they're the changes that can be done, as an example. However, understandably, if a person's dealing with a severe freeze state, and then the second waves of worry and guilt and uncertainty because of what they've dealt with and for the length of time, and not knowing what to do next or how to come back from it, breaking a cycle like that through the different senses might not be possible. But don't worry, I've got you covered. What needs to be applied when it comes to a situation like that is the bottom-up approach. You might wonder, what does the bottom-up approach mean? Because in a deep freeze state, the mind could be offline, shut down. It's reached a mental capacity and load, and emotionally that's taken a toll as well. Meaning that there's a timeout, and of course that can persist for months. So, like with the process of learning to walk again, it's like learning to wake the mind back up so it can start feeling and acting on stuff and reacting and making those moves and changes. It's like you got a car and the engine, it's not working. Maybe it's disconnected from the other key core elements of the car. It needs connecting, it needs tightening up, it needs checking the other areas, the cables and all of that. Just slowly reconstructing it, building it back up, exercising it, waking the mind up through very small, steady methods, and then building up from that piece by piece, like climbing that mountaintop again. So one of the first methods that can be done is somewhat easy because it's something that just about everyone does in order to stay alive, and that's breathing. By breathing slowly, it can reintroduce a form of calmness and relaxation, especially when there's no panic, of course. If there is panic attacks, the recovery from that can be explained in one of my previous videos, and it will be in the playlist up there where the eye symbol is, okay? But in terms of a deep freeze where the person has withdrawn, there's a lot of noise inside, but they are somewhat functioning, or they're at least surviving, just getting through day by day, just getting by, and that's it, the basics, or just under that. But one thing that does remain a constant in a person's life is pretty much breathing, and that's why they're still alive. That's why they're still here, despite how bad they may feel and how hard things are and how scary things may appear. The person is still present. The person is, because they're breathing. So because it's simple or somewhat simple, it can be performed. So that's where it acts as a base ground, starting point. Learning to master breathing and applying different techniques by breathing and practicing that, it can strengthen the core of the body. It can strengthen the lungs. It can strengthen the airways and cleanse it in some ways by doing nice, steady, deep breaths and exhaling out, creating a circuit, a loop, which can bring about a sense of familiarity and stabilize the Groundhog Day, because that is a loop itself. Breathing in through the nose and then out through the mouth, and just simply repeating it. The person can choose to close their eyes if they want to, or maybe that's too much, because when eyes closed, they may see or feel things. That could be too much. Simply keeping the eyes open and breathing in and out at a steady pace. If they're able to, or if someone's present to help them, slightly more advanced forms of breathing, such as breathing in, holding for 1 to 2 seconds, and then breathing out through the mouth, exhaling 1 to 2 seconds, building that lung capacity and that lung resistance up. Nice and slow and steady and stable. Breathing in, holding for a few seconds, and then out through the mouth. Holding until filling the lungs back up. By building that level of resilience, it's teaching the body and the mind like a reward system. In order to get enough oxygen and quality air and to be able to exhale it afterwards, there needs to be a level of self-control. And the self-control being breathing steady and at a nice pace, but then holding it for a few seconds and then releasing. By building that reward system, it reminds the body and the brain that it can feel better, energize in a way, clear the head just a little bit by following those steps. Positive reinforcement. Feeling a positive feeling or a sense of relief by performing a certain action, more likely to commit to that. And being committed and repeating certain actions of a positive, healthy nature can help challenge and counter the previous negative or unhealthy repetitive cycles. It might not quite break it, it might not quite replace it, but it goes in parallel, allowing the body and the mind with time to become more alert to the negatives and the positives, and then having the choice and option to choose which pathway to go down. And the more positives could be more persuasive for the individual to follow slowly. So those breathing methods can help. Incorporated with breathing sounds, whether that be nature, water, the sound of a tap running, the sounds of birds tweeting, the sound of one's own breath, or the humming of a person's voice. That can create a deep tissue and muscle and mind connection, both the mind and the body connecting as one by performing controlled breathing and then adding possible sounds as well, whether it be sounds around, like with nature, meditation, yoga, music, or if it be a person's own voice, if they're able. If they're able to use their own voice, it can slowly help reintroduce them to having and finding their voice, which they may have lost with time due to that frozen state. For quite some time, there's been a lot of noise in here and maybe their internal voice talking things through, but not much has come out this way through action. If they can incorporate their mouth and voice, vocal cords, when breathing, that can help reward the body and reintegrate that ability to talk or to at least make sounds, learning to do it again and being comfortable in the process. Now, certain sounds and pitches and frequencies can help wake up the mind and areas of the brain, like a low humming sound when breathing out through the mouth, like a v sound, a v sound. It might sound silly, or it might come across as silly, but certain frequencies can tap into the nervous system and the mind, calming it or waking it up. So, if possible, by integrating sounds or one's own voice into breathing, it's like building off from the previous exercise, the previous method, right? So an example could be, breathe in, then out, but when breathing out, by making a slight hum sound, like that, or so breathe in, and then out. Something like that. Breathe in, and then out. That vibration, it can ease the mind and the tension around. Now, if that person wasn't quite able to do that part, the sound, or it wasn't stimulating enough, if there was another individual present, they could possibly do it themselves, or breathing together. Of course, an action like that would have to require the one with symptoms to be able to reach out to another person or be close to. And granted, in fairness, this video is more on the severe level, where they may not have anyone or they may not feel able to reach out to anyone. So, when it comes to sound, if it's too much to reach out for another person for assistance with breathing and sounds, if they don't have the voice themselves to be able to facilitate it, there's always a way around it. Go on YouTube, look for vibrations, frequencies, meditation, sounds, humming, and just listen to it whilst breathing, opening up the body, the mind, maybe the heart, allowing the blood flow with the breathing to be steady, to not be erratic, gently slowing the heart down, the rate, blood pressure lowering itself by the controlled breathing, the resistance for it, the reward program, and then the gentle humming sounds and frequencies which can tap into the brain. You know, the wavelength can tap into the mind and create a connection, or even alleviate certain stresses and memories or noise. If a person's dealing with a lot of noise inside to begin with, they may need counter external sound to combat what's going on inside. And that's like one of the components to breaking out of the Groundhog Day, by being able to either replace or reintroduce something different for a change, allowing one of the sensory systems with the body to encounter a new experience. So they may be very familiar with the typical deathly sound of silence, or the humming, buzzing sensation and feeling in the head. By listening to a different pitch and frequency, something that they're not used to, it may seem alien-like to them. That different sound can disrupt that current pattern and cycle of darkness and fullness. By being introduced to a different sound wave and frequency, it allows us a distraction, even if it's only temporary, allowing the person to escape from their thoughts, escape from their darkness, just for a little bit. These subtle little changes, whilst maintaining the core element of breathing, which they're very used to. Slow changes without, destabilizing the body and mind abruptly. Nice and calm and steady. Different frequencies and vibration sounds. Like or now, in fairness, I wouldn't be able to keep that up for you because I'll run out of breath myself, but examples of certain tones and the pitch of voice. In other ways, it might not be reachable, but it doesn't always have to be just sounds. It can be a person's voice. And maybe this is jumping ahead a little bit, but just as a heads up, other ways of regulating the body and mind in a healthy way, a sensory distraction with sound and auditory could be hearing a familiar voice of a person that they know and care about, but in a different tone, a different pitch. So instead of saying, "Hi there, how are you? I hope you're okay," incorporating the lower pitch, it can sound like this, okay? "Hello there, how are you? You remember me, don't you? I'm wishing you well, and I hope that you're okay. Have you been able to sleep in recent time? What's been going on, as in those sensory feelings? Do you feel your heart rate slowing down just a little bit? Do you feel your hand, your foot slowly releasing that energy, and whilst maintaining it, slowly and controlling, nice and steady, just like the way you're breathing? Try to keep that up. Nice deep breaths in, nice deep breaths out. Nice and slow. You're safe here. You don't have to explain yourself. Everything's okay in this space, in this moment. You can just sit back and relax. It's all you have to do. You don't owe anyone an explanation at this moment in time. And that feeling of an emotional weight, an emotional debt that feels impossible to pay off, as an internal monologue. You, yourself, don't owe me anything. It's okay. It really is. So, that is like an example of a slightly different pitch, tone of voice. Whether that be something that they have access to or could down the line, it can be a calming effect, providing that they know of the other person that can do that pitch change. It can be what friends do with one another to keep each other grounded or one over the other, or even what family members or partners could do for the other half if they were struggling, to just bring about those new wavelengths and frequencies to pierce through that shield, that hardness, that darkness, and bring a bit of light and steadiness within. Now, beside sound, the motor abilities, as in movement and muscle contractions, joints, fingers, hands, wrist, ankles, feet. Areas like that which can be controlled, moving the hands, opening and closing like that. Now, on a slight level, when it comes to cats, when they're doing that pawing on an object, an item, on a person, it's a sign of comfort and being content. And it's also a way of, I guess, feeling grounded and comfortable with what it's touching and interacting with. Humans can do the same thing in certain ways. So when that is performed just by themselves, opening and closing the hands, it's like a level of exercise and motor skills, just reintroducing those abilities, performing a slightly different task from what they would normally do. And that can be advanced in certain ways by closing the hands, clenching the fist, or curling feet up, toes up, clenching, holding for a little bit, feeling the muscles and the tension within shake just a little bit, building a level of resistance where it starts shaking a little bit, and then opening the hands, opening the fingers, or opening the feet, just like that, and releasing all that built up energy and tension within. Whether it gets rid of pre-existing tension or built up tension in the moment, it kind of reintroduces and learns the body and mind that certain stress and physical tension can be released in meaningful, safe ways and in a controlled fashion. Just opening and closing the hands, slowly rotating the wrist. Just slow, gentle movements like that can break the cycle and bring a level of peace and calmness. And the same with the ankles, slowly rotating them, or even slowly turning the neck, twisting and turning. A form of stretching and relieving of tension inside. So when it comes to clenching the hands again like that, holding for a little bit longer this time round, seeing how long an individual can hold it for until the tension gets a little bit too much, but then there is that choice. There's that choice to let it go and release it into the atmosphere, to come out of the hands and the joints, to be a little bit more at ease and relaxed. It can be a bit of exercise as well. And like with exercise, it can either clear the mind or it can make the body feel a little bit better with the dopamine, the effects, the exercise, the heart being exercised, the blood flow, flushing the body, cleansing it just a little bit. But that full-on exercise may be a bit too much in the moment. Simple hand movements, motor movements, and just twisting, turning slightly can alleviate any strains and aches. And just simply building up tension is a way of controlling it and being able to release it, allowing the brain to learn and be reminded that it's not always permanent. Things can go, and you know, when it is felt, it's just temporary for a certain length of time. It's like telling the brain that it is okay and that still in control and still have a choice at times, even when it feels like there's no choice. As well, the reward system would apply by clenching fist, clenching bicep, tensing a certain part of the body which they can comfortably do. Build up a bit of tension, build up a bit of either fatigue or lactic acid, and then slowly letting go, opening the hands, the palm, stretching the fingers, and feeling that rush of relief, a feel-good feeling which rewards the body to perform those actions again as a way of learning how to cope and control certain stress and physical strains to an extent which could expand onto pre-existing stress and strains on the body, right? Some people may, subconsciously open and close like a cat, paw and prod, press like that. I think some call it making biscuits. By making biscuits, you're performing a sensory, relaxing, satisfying feeling like that, whether that be on a blanket, against a wall, feeling grounded, but also by performing this, you're releasing tension and strain, and you're also relaxing the body a little bit and feeling a little bit more safe and secure and more familiar of what you're doing. And it's a 2-in-1 that, because by opening and closing the hands, releasing, building, then releasing tension, if it's making contact with an object, something soft, nice, familiar, it's like breaking that Groundhog Day cycle of the familiar touches, being able to feel something different for once, being able to be introduced or relearn a certain sensation and feeling of a soft or vibrant or a fluffy material, maybe, which they've not felt for a while. So even the touch of something can either trigger a positive memory, or it can just simply cause a bit of disruption, but more importantly, a distraction with the routine without causing too many problems. Some people as well subconsciously may already do that, or they may curl their feet up and move them, twist and turn, movements like that, as a way of regulating and coping with stress ongoing. That might already be applied in some ways, right? So there are slightly different methods. Other ways could just simply be gently stroking, the forearm or the wrist, just slow movements like that. And why exactly? Because if the mind or the brain feels a little bit shut down or shut off, by feeling oneself, as in their own arm, hand, chest area, shoulder, it's like they're reminding themselves that they do exist, that they are physically present and still here, and even mentally as well. Being able to touch, being able to feel present, still in this world, in this life, even if reality doesn't make sense, even if everything feels surreal, by touching oneself appropriately, it's like being reminded and grounded with reality that you still exist, still present. So it's just little movements like that. These different methods, from breathing to sounds to movement, gently, is re-engaging the brain and the mind, because in order to do these methods, it does require the mind to send those messages down through the axon, the nervous systems, to those connected joints and parts of the body to be able to move. The only reason why this is happening is because the brain is alive and somewhat functioning. The reason why you're able to breathe can be tied to the brain as well, but also the heart and other organs. And the breathing part, one of the core foundations, oxygen to the head, keeping it healthy and stable. If there was a lack of oxygen or no oxygen, that up there wouldn't be working and it could become fatal, So the breathing part to help the brain is one of the first steps, and it's the easiest steps because most people normally tend to breathe without thinking too much about it. So that's the beginning. Even just breathing, if that's all a person can do and in a slightly controlled way, big positive. It's allowing the brain to function to some extent. Slow movement, but it's progression, and that's what matters. Now, combining sound and touch, a 2-in-1, like what we said earlier. Touching an object or something that could create vibrations, whether that be some kind of like massage device, some like muscle massage device, whether that be a speaker, whether that be an object which can rattle or shake and create a sensory vibration which could either be felt through the chest or throat, or on a smaller scale could be felt through touch, as in you handle an object which has or makes vibrations, being able to feel that vibration which passes through the body and the nervous system, creating a new sensation. Could be a bit of an override to that deep rut a person is in. That vibrational stimulation, the frequency behind it, can connect with the brain in a way, the brain wave, and bring it a bit more back to life, or even trigger a positive memory, or just a nice sensory feeling. Just feeling or hearing something satisfying can reward the body and brain to perform that action once again, and allowing that brain to learn and feel with the world that's around them, you know? So touch-based vibrations kind of really connects the person to the world and what's around them in a controlled way. Other forms, if possible, touch-related, could be massage, self-massage, if possible, around the ear. So that can be just under and around the back of the ear, pressing in slightly, just where it connects to the jaw, pressing in very slowly and rotating or moving up and down nice and slow. Okay? Like there. Or a bit there. At the same time. Slow, rhythmic movements. Not too low on the throat, because that might not be safe, but just behind the ear and around, where it feels a bit soft, and pressing in gently, and circular, slow rubs back and forth or up and down on both sides, maybe at the same time, with the ears being connected within, internally into the brain, getting as close as one can to the brain area without it being targeted too much, and just slowly pressing gently and massaging within reason. Of course, the other method that could be done is like getting the hands like that on top or on the side of the head, the temple, individual fingertips pressing in on the scalp, and then slowly, wiggling the fingers. Then that's like a 2-in-1. Wiggling the fingers, feeling grounded, but also making it connect with the brain like that. Just slight little twitches of the finger, pressing in onto the scalp, connecting to the brain, just to act as like a head massage, but on a slightly more advanced level, which is possible to do on oneself without much danger, because there's not much too sensitive hair. If it was the throat area, that could go wrong, but up here, it's say just gently pressing in individual fingers into the scalp and wiggling or circular motion. It can create maybe a nice sensation which they become familiar with, and they feel encouraged to repeat it again. So that all those earlier steps and methods, if they're applied as well, and it can stack slowly with time, it's building that bridge, getting closer to waking up in a way within reason. On top of that, a way of incorporating the brain a little bit more, if the voice comes back, or not quite possible the voice, but the internal voice describing an object. I mean, just example, a bottle like this, looking at the bottle, feeling it, the ridges. This is multifunctional already. This one tool can follow some of those steps, what we've already looked at. The breathing method or the senses could just simply be, if it's already filled with liquid like a juice, smelling it, smelling the sweetness, the tingles up the nose and the sensory feeling inside. Gentle breaths, smelling something nice and scented can make a person feel calm and relaxed. And if they want, drinking it. A slightly different taste on the taste buds, reintroduced to maybe their favorite drink or a certain flavor that they've not had for a long time, breaking that cycle slowly. Movements, weighted movement, holding the drink, twisting and turning with the wrist, or if it was slightly empty, squeezing it so you can like kind of crush it in a way. Just certain gentle movement, incorporating the body, using the brain to function and slowly wake up and distract one's own internal battles and demons with something more simple and small scale. Even just the ridges on here. Slowly dragging the fingertips, the nails up and down it. A different sensation, a different touch, a different feeling which they've not felt before or not in a while. It just distracts the body, the mind, even if it's only temporary. And with these ridges up and down, start feeling vibrations in the fingertip because of, the ruts, the patterns. Do it slow, do it fast. You get those tingles in the fingertips which run down the fingers. So even a bigger object, or where there's more ingrained patterns running the fingers, the hand over it, can be like sensory feelings, which is good for the body, good for the mind, more so. And as well, when incorporating more perspective and thoughts within, just simply describing what it is. It's a bottle. What's within it? A form of juice. What flavour? Mango. What's the colour of the lid? Well, it's orange, and the bottle itself is plastic and see-through. It comes from a certain shop, a certain store. And then even looking at the ingredients and the values and the numbers, statistics on the back. Simple things like that can bring someone out of a deep freeze and put them in a temporary spot where they've got the free will to think openly and clearly, without consequence, without noise, and without too much trouble. Even if it's only temporary, even if it's only like a 5 or 10 minute window, it just enables some time for that person to be more themselves, or relearn themselves, find themselves along that line. And by slowly talking about an object or what's present, it's allowing the brain to find its thoughts and feelings within, to be able to find that voice and to be able to act on it, maybe externally, very slowly. As well, slow eye movement and tapping. If it's still not quite possible to get the voice out externally, only internally, slow eye movement, keeping the head still, but moving the eyes left to right, up and down, right, left, down, up. Repeating that very slowly, because like EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, that's like a way of dealing with trauma, getting the person to relax, move the eyes slowly, following a light or a finger, distraction, allowing that defense mechanism, the resistance, within, to lower the guard and the shield so the other person can do gentle tapping sounds to pierce through that protective layer to get to the core memories, thoughts and feelings, ask questions, and then deal with the trauma that way. Well, personal eye movement can be relaxing and calming and distracting by focusing in on something. Focusing in on a task that's simple can distract oneself from all the thoughts and noise within. Right? Slow movement and gentle tapping on the side. Like that. Or like with another object. Like that, or gentle taps. With an object, with one's hand, it can be done in different ways, but it's like grounding methods of recovery, bringing oneself back to that conscious self of conscious thoughts, present, being in the present, living and feeling in the moment. Something which a person who's gone through a deep, severe freeze may have not felt for some time. Slow actions like that, opening and easing the mind, and even physically with the hand movement, the foot movement, opening and closing, regulating and controlling those stresses, those strains, and even releasing some of it by stretching. Let's make that clear. simply by stretching or even performing yoga by oneself. It doesn't have to be done outside. It can be done inside in the comfort of the home. It doesn't have to be done with big groups of people or friends. It can just be done by yourself or oneself. An individual does certain positions which they enjoy or familiar with or find easy. By performing certain positions and stretching whilst also breathing, it's a 2-in-1 method of combining two sensories together. Breathing, controlling healthy oxygen levels, helping the mind, and then the stretching, certain yoga positions, the downwards dog. Is there an Eiffel Tower? I don't know, I'm not an expert, but those that may perform it or research into it, those yoga positions and movements, slow and steady, can also bring about relaxation and ease the mind, but also ease the muscles and the body, the tension, the muscles, the deep tissue within, slow and steady. If one wants to combine it with music as well and sound, that's a 3-in-1 grounding method. So it can be combined together or it can be done individually, depending on what the person can do and the mental, physical capacity of that said person, depending on the severity of the deep freeze. But, it can be done bit by bit, slowly. Now, in regard to that, what also needs to be acknowledged is some additional methods, okay? So I'll just mention that, just give me a second. Okay. So if you want to take a little break or have a drink, feel free to do so. I think I need to stretch myself because my back's aching just a little bit, right? But the next steps that we move on to is more so the thoughts, using the mind a little bit more to try and channel the disruption, to try and channel the causes and the feelings before and after, to allow some time of relaxation, but also some time of reflection, and then some time of being able to deal with the problems or certain issues which is holding an individual back from reaching their potential or just growing again, or simply what's preventing them from being able to reach out to an individual that they deeply care about. The body and mind is pulling in two different directions, wanting it, needing it, but also feeling not deserving of it or not worthy, too difficult to come back from, levels of doubt, talking oneself out of it, talking oneself down. Whether that links to the past, with previous trauma for some people, where they may not be able to reach out, they may not feel deserving or worthy. That can happen at times. Like with a person who's been told that they're to blame for everything, that can be wearing on someone. They feel to blame for everything. They may feel that the long, severe freeze is their fault too, when it's not really. They weren't asking or anticipating it. It happened and the mind, the self-defense mechanism, took over. But then with the recovery, return feeling a million miles off and not possible. But the longer it goes on for the silence, the harder it is to come back from it, or the harder it is to reach back out to previous people. There will be some deeper questions as to finalize everything later on in this video, so feel free to stick around for that. But, when engaging the mind with some of the methods that have just been explained, the next step would be slowly, the middle section of the bottom-up approach would be the processing thoughts and feelings in small amounts, not in one big rush, just focusing in on little aspects, as in how one is feeling in the moment. How were they feeling, or how did they feel previously with what's happened? Can they remember what's happened? Are they aware? But just a form of introspection internally, or if it's too noisy, writing questions out on paper, releasing that energy, and then writing an answer out as well. And either keeping the notes or throwing them away, a throwaway note. Being able to release the tension in the moment, the mental tension and load, easing the mental noise inside, putting it on paper, and then ripping it up so there's no fear of worry of it being leaked or found by anyone. Being able to control that, control oneself and having the choice on how it goes. That's how it can be applied. Slow and steady, and importantly, processing on one's own terms and in small quantities. It doesn't have to be in a particular order. It could be the first thought or feeling that comes to an individual's mind. And going over it to try and work out why things are that way or why they may feel that way. It might be blank, it might be brain fog, but there's no harm in trying. That they can at least write a word or a feeling on paper and maybe expand on it at a later point, a different time. Not everything is going to be known or felt on the spot. It's a process. It can take time. They just write what they can and what they feel, or the first thing that comes to their mind. Because likely the words that come to them, even if it can't be expressed, even if it's just a feeling, will likely hold a great level of weight and value, significance behind it, right? In the process of that, what can be incorporated, the next step of swaying, like a pendulum, metaphorically, from peace to discomfort to peace, to remind the body, the mind more importantly, that it doesn't always have to be in a high state of high functionality, high anxiety, a form of functioning depression, or a form of hypervigilance. The mind being reminded it's not always one way. So with that breathing, the stretching, the touch, the sensory relaxations, the changes to the cycles, steady and calm, creating peace and positive reinforcement to perform those actions again. Having those moments, reminding oneself of those moments when things get too tough or difficult. Allowing themselves to go to a place of discomfort to reflect on a dark memory or any unprocessed troubles and struggles, current or from the past. And when it gets too much, the ability to pull away slowly and return back to simply breathing or pouring or holding something, describing an object, is like push-pull dynamic, but in a more healthy, controlled way. An individual who's gone through a deep freeze may show forms of avoidance, withdrawal, a push-pull dynamic. They may have a good time or get very close to a partner, a friend. It gets too much, too vulnerable, too scary, and other triggers, pull away, retreat. That can be done by them, but this can be done too. So processing a certain thought, feeling, or just considering it gets too much, a bit too tense, pulling away, little distraction. Oh, look at this bottle. It's orange, it's plastic, it's got like patterns on it in a spiral. It came from this store. As for the values, it's got so much energy, no fat, no sugar. Well, maybe just a little bit, but yeah, a distraction. It doesn't have to be looking at a bottle. It could be describing the view. It could be having a little drink or going to make a drink. Whilst yes, the thoughts and feelings as you pull away still remain in here compared to an individual that may physically distance themselves from a friend or a partner. You don't have to see them again. You don't have to hear from them until the time is right. When dealing with internal thoughts and struggles, pulling away from that, as you pull in one direction, so does the noise and the demons. So instead of running from it, by incorporating or introducing a grounding recovery method, a breathing method, a feeling, touch-based sensory method and therapy, like what we've talked about earlier, it can counter the noise with a more healthy approach, a more healthy sound, a more healthy feeling. It could be considered like flooding the mind, which is already full, but just easing it by adding in some more positive additions and activities and methods like what's being talked about. That's what can be done. So what it does by swaying from peace to discomfort and back and forth, it strengthens the body and also strengthens the brain in being able to be a little bit more resilient and controlling it just a little bit better, having an escape plan, having an alternative bubble to retreat to instead of the complete silence and the Groundhog Day, being able to find a temporary spot to breathe and to feel a little bit more, to do different actions away from the norm, the boring norm, to feel more like themselves, or maybe reinvent themselves. That's what can be done. It builds resilience in the mind, being able to switch off at times or distract oneself. It might not be possible on the spot. It might take time. But if it's followed up with somewhat consistently and a level of frequency, the body and mind can adapt to it and get more used to it and learn, strengthening, easing that weight, that tension inside very slowly, but it can be done if a person's stuck with it and tried. The other thing that can be done, channeling certain thoughts and memories and feelings through objects. This is kind of deep, but when dealing with fragments and nodes and memories of the past which hold a weight, a value, which can be overwhelming, overbearing, and create negative feelings, especially people with PTSD, dealing with trauma in the past, and those that may have complex trauma, individuals that may have unresolved problems in the past. By using an object, whatever that is, whether it be a bottle, whether it be a cup, whether it be a piece of paper, whether it be some material, just using an object and channeling all those thoughts and feelings onto that object. If it feels like the past lives on within a person's mind, instead of it always taking up all that room and space in here, why not bring it to life within reason, or bring that struggle to life, make it materialize into a physical object and look at it. Why exactly? Because it engages the brain, it engages the mind to deal with it, but under one's own terms and conditions. So, if it be an encounter, an experience, a person from the past, by putting all that energy, those thoughts and feelings and memories into an object and channeling it as if this bottle is a person from the past. Or in some ways, if you had a dartboard, if you had a dartboard or a piece of paper and you drew a face on it, you drew a stick figure and you wrote a name, associated person from the past, or a bad moment and an event. It's not about reliving it all and being re-traumatized, right? It's just about dealing with whatever that's going on inside of the head in the moment and taking it out and putting it into an object. It doesn't always have to be reaching into the deep core memories, which has been suppressed, and then re-traumatizing oneself. It's about, in the moment, if there are things going on, feelings, if it can't be said by voice communication, if it's not quite the time to write it on paper or you've gone past that point, what an individual can do is for them to use those thoughts and feelings and try and envision it in front of them, but as an object so it's not too triggering. Why exactly then? Besides dealing with the problem face on in a controlled way, it's because something that could be big and scary, which may not physically be present anymore or exist anymore, depending on the circumstance, by materializing it into an object, which an object like this is just a bottle, it's harmless, it's not going to cause any harm or trouble, or a bit of paper, or a curtain, or a pillow, even a pillow. By putting all those fears or certain worries or certain issues, certain frustrations, certain anger, certain grief, different emotions, words by themselves to an object, or a person, a memory, a feeling to an object. Releasing that energy without losing it completely, taking that strain, that tension, that noise away from the head, even if it's only temporary, and putting it into an object, holding it out in front, looking at it, and processing it. Almost like a backwards method to what we said earlier: processing, swaying, channeling an object, right? Looking at that problem now head on, looking at that past memory, looking at that previous friend, that past ex, as bad as it was, as damaging as it was, this problem now materialized as a physical object. Can it cause me any harm anymore? No. Understandably, what's in here can be different and is valid and believed in. I understand. I get that. I hear you. But in the moment, when dealing with the past, which may no longer be present physically beside the mental aspect, putting a past physical memory person into a physical object in the moment, you can look at it and ask yourself, this, that person, that moment, that thing, what's it doing now? Nothing. Powerless. It can't do anything. It can't harm me. It can't touch me. It's got no control over me. In fact, I have control over it now. I have the choice to put this bottle and push it away, throw it aside, throw it in the bin, get rid of it. I can throw it on the ground. I can use sublimation and use pent-up energy, frustration, and I can crush that bottle. I can stand on that bottle. I can squeeze all the air out and relieve oneself through energy. You know, that opening and closing. Squeezing that bottle. It's, whether someone would call it revenge or like a rage room or dealing with unresolved emotions, but channeling problems and memories and thoughts and people into an object, using the introspection and the critical thinking of what was once a problem in this physical materialistic format. At this moment, it can no longer cause me problems or harm me. It's a bottle, it's a hairbrush, it's a toothbrush, it's a bit of paper, you know? Things like that. It's not brainwashing or indoctrinating. It's just giving that time for the body, the mind to catch up and process with the past, acknowledging the past is significant and possibly life-changing and acts as a weight in the present time. But the person themselves may get to a point where they know they want to break free from it. They don't want to be held back by the past. They don't want to be reminded. So by finding a way to overcome it, this is a possible method, even if it's only temporary. Building up that resilience, standing up to that darkness, but in a subtle way, channeling a memory or a feeling into an object and then maybe performing an activity on it. A dartboard, a face to that dartboard, darts, throw the darts at the dartboard. A a feeling of relief, a feeling of gaining back control, a feeling of giving it back, but in a controlled way. I hope that makes sense. It doesn't have to resort to violence or anything negative or dark like that, but it's just a form of confronting a possible past struggle, a negative experience, a bad person, confronting it on one's own terms, relieving all the tension from here in the moment and putting it into an object to feel a little bit calmer, a little bit more at peace, and more space in the head to actually confront and deal with it and question. You know? When it feels like it lives inside, it may cause hurt, worry, panic, freezing, terrors, bad dreams. But when it's taken out of the head and it's in physical form as like a static object, an inanimate object, what can it actually do to you? Does it look scary? No. Is it big and strong? No. It's small. It's fragile. It's soft. It's not good because of what it once was. But in this format, it can't cause me any harm. It can't cause me any danger. I'm not threatened by it. I'm safe. It's just allowing the mind to think critically, but also disconnect the darkness and reapply it physically within vision and talk to it. Because sometimes in life, maybe getting closure has to be done in alternative ways. Maybe getting closure or confronting someone or something may not be possible because they may not be present or nearby. Channeling it in other ways allows the individual to do it on their terms for once in life, at their pace, when they're ready, when they feel strong enough, when they can. And if not, if they can't, that's okay. Just focus on the earlier methods and just keep on working at that by itself, because that can do good in itself and strengthen the mind. So yeah, introspection internally or outwards, verbal communication with an inanimate object, getting the voice back. On top, it could be a scenario. Scenarios could apply as in when dealing with the past and overcoming certain elements or dealing with it, putting oneself third person into the shoes of another individual, making it up or hearing the stories from other people's points of views, putting oneself in the shoes of another individual, third person. What would you do differently? How would you respond? How would you feel? What would you do in that situation? It could be any example, it could be any situation. But just allowing the individual with the symptoms who may feel frozen to have some time out, to not feel alone, to consider that there are other people out there that are just as worse off, if not worse, and so on. And the thing is, the reason why third person, retrospective, introspection, but masked as a form of a scenario in the moment, in the past, or the future, what would you do? If you were them, how would you think? How would you feel? If you were that individual, what do they desire? What do they want? What do they value most? From what you've heard of someone, what are they like as a person? What are they known to be? Oh, that nickname, that person. What do they ask for? What do they question? What do they worry about? What do they enjoy? Just things like that. It's important because, in a way, third person communication, putting themselves in the shoes of another person, but secretly it's them talking about themselves without confronting themselves, putting themselves in the shoes of another individual, but secretly it's them still. Talking in third person, role play, pretending to be someone else helps bypass that defensive wall, that self-defense mechanism. it bypasses and goes around the shield, allowing the individual to share their true wants, their true feelings, their true actions, as in what they would do, what they would want, what they would change. It's just a little exercise to unlock the real them, the real version, especially during a deep freeze when they may feel very numb and may feel like they've lost themselves. It's deep down within. And third person can help relocate and find that again. Now, when it comes to reaching out, returning, may feel like one of the bigger tasks, a mountain to climb. That's if the individual genuinely wants a connection with people or someone. Because if they don't want a connection, it has to be respected. As hard as it is, it has to be respected. When it comes to returning and dealing with the weight, any guilt, any shame, any impending debt where it feels like they may have hurt someone, they may have let someone down, they feel to blame. It's about just in general acknowledging that they don't have to explain themselves in the moment, despite the freeze, despite the silence. They don't have to say much. Just steady, simple communication, basic communication, and just slowly build from there. But to ultimately figure out the course of action, as in returning, finding people, relationships, a partner, things like that, which can be difficult. The one with the symptoms, the survivor has to ask themselves, in certain circumstances where there are people about or people present originally, connections which may still exist and statuses and relationships which may still remain open as in a door, what the survivor with the symptoms and the deep freeze needs to ask themselves internally. And I will try and assist in a way, okay? I'll try and ask some questions, and then anyone watching, you don't have to answer. You can just listen in if you want and answer a different time. And as in those answers, I don't need to know. You don't have to tell me whatsoever. You don't have to tell me anything. Just answer it yourself deep down inside your mind, or anyone's mind for that matter, right? Deep questions could be, based on the struggles, the silence, the withdrawal, the weight, the struggles, and the return, how does that weigh up against being in the presence of someone, whether that be a friend or a partner? How does it ultimately weigh up? If it feels really imbalanced and one-sided, preventing them from reaching out to someone, the further questions that need to be asked are, do they, as in the survivor, do they or did they have a strong connection with someone previously? Did they get on well and feel safe, feel comfortable? Did they feel relaxed when around a partner, a potential relationship? Did they feel secure, at peace, physically and mentally relaxed, even if it was only moments because of other things in life? Did it feel like that when they spent time with the other half or friend, it felt worthwhile? What type of sensations and feelings did they feel inside when hearing the partner's voice for the very first time and onwards? Did they ever get sensations and feelings of butterflies? Any warm, melting feelings inside? Any positive or shyness, but in an excited way? Such emotions like that with someone could suggest, to feel that again, it would be worth it. other questions then. If there is a level of doubt that they feel that they've ruined their chance at a relationship or friendship, they feel like the silence has gone on too long and the other half has just moved on in life, what you need to ask yourself is, do you think highly of a particular person? Do you respect that individual? Do you think about that individual often? Beside where they're at in life, what they're doing, do you still think of them from time to time or daily, frequent? Do you ever have dreams or thoughts of them in certain ways? Do you ever get feelings despite the impossible feeling? Do you ever get feelings of the future with them at any point despite the frozen state and the silence? Do you care about that person deeply? Do you secretly, deep down, want to return or be at one with them and long term without any fear, without any worry, without any instability, without any abandonment, without any troubles of that nature? Then link back to, did they make you feel valued for the time that you spent with them? Did they make you feel special? Did they respect you? Did they listen to you? Did they understand or at least try to understand you? Did they support you? Were they there for you even when you didn't ask for it or couldn't get it out of your voice to reach out for help because you felt you couldn't? Did they try and distract you at times and try and be funny or make jokes and be light-hearted in dark times? Did they give you butterflies? Did they make you feel valued and appreciated? Because if any of them ring true and that how you think and feel of them, if there is a form of reciprocation, or at least at the time when present, it was reciprocated in different ways, why should it change now? That's what you have to ask yourself. If you were close enough or deep enough connected with that said person, deep enough to possibly trigger a withdrawal or indirectly trigger a past unresolved memory or trauma in certain circumstances, because it got too real with someone, that could be a sign that things were moving in the right direction, fast or slow, and because it got too real, it may have got too loving, it may have got too deep. The brain kicked in as a survival tactic that too good to be true, scared of losing it all. The higher value the partner is, the more they give, the more they show, the more you have to lose. The things that you want the most and desire the most are also the things that you're most scared of, because you once had it or once felt like you could have and then lost it. That's what can create those fears and worries, possibly. But upon reflection, all this time and silence, do they feel like they're meant to be in like how you found them in some way? Do you ever feel symbolisms or messages or reminders in the world, in life, in regard to them? Do you ever feel any energy in regard to them? Because sometimes what's meant to be won't miss either person and can come back under certain circumstances. I'm just trying to fill all the different areas possibly, and like with friendships as well, connections with people. In these circumstances, and if there's a level of reciprocation in different ways, as in what they did for you, what you did for them, and how it was acknowledged at some point in the past, If the connection was that deep and the chemistry was there, and maybe if other people were present and witnessed and acknowledged it too, the connection that you had with that said person, if it's that strong and powerful and meaningful and deep, you have to ask yourself, would they have given up on you that easily? Would they have just moved on and walked off that easily? If they meant the world to you and you meant the world to them, would they just simply click their fingers and walk? Or would they try and understand? Would they try to be patient while still continuing on doing things what they need to do in life? Maybe the door is still open. It can come down to personal feelings and interpretation. It can't be forced. It can't be rushed. It is where it is, and it needs to be respected, the decision at the end of the day. But sometimes deep internal introspection is required to counter the freeze response. Because sometimes the freeze response can be demons talking. Sometimes the OCD or survivor's guilt can be the demons talking. And sometimes symptoms from the past, environments, relationships and friendships, and it's worn the person down, can be the demons talking them out of returning back to safety. The demons talking them out of denying themselves of having a good time, living again, growing finally, but with someone, you know? The deep freeze at first can be a self-defense mechanism of self-protection, but the worries, the thoughts and the feelings later, self-denial of happiness, self-punishment, feeling of survivor's guilt because of the past, not feeling worthy or deserving of moving on. I think what one needs to ask themselves is, for all of the struggles and the intense suffering that you have gone through, regardless of feeling in the right or in the wrong, haven't you suffered more than enough? Haven't you already suffered a lifetime of struggling physically and mentally? Maybe now, maybe just now is the time to be able to slowly let go of some things and be reintroduced to newer or more new things, to be able to grow, to be able to heal, but slowly, to not have to do it all alone, to not have to fight every battle alone, and also certainly to not have to withdraw to a bubble alone. That certain weights and certain issues can be shared with the right people, providing you have that feeling or sense of those individuals existing, and if you've been around them previously. Good people can show good actions, but the timing and the length it's demonstrated for, the frequency, the consistency, is what matters most. It's understandable. Good people, good actions. Is it a catch? Is it a trap? When will it give? When will they show their true colours? Will it be like the past all over again? In certain circumstances, if you've known people long enough or for a fair period of time, if they have kept up a certain behaviour and treated you a certain way positively, and it's been consistent, it's been frequent, there's no demands, there's no unusual behaviour, there's no suspicions, and it's just consistent, that can create stability in its own right. Maybe reflect back on that. Consider if that ever was the case with anyone that you have met. Because if so, it could well be real and true and still exist in some way. Now, sometimes the worries of considering taking a chance and then finding out someone's moved on. Subtle ways of checking could be social media, statuses, photos, within reason. Have they truly moved on? Because what if they're just getting on or trying to, but their heart never left you? It may not show. It may not be obvious, but that could still be the case. Of course, it's a very sensitive, delicate area to act upon. So maybe it's not something to be rushed into when considering, but it's something to think of with time. The main important focus point, though, is slowly easing out of that freeze. All those methods, applying them bit by bit with time, can go a long way. So, with that all being said, if you'd like to rewatch this video at any point or time, you're welcome to do so. You want to save this video to your playlist, you're welcome to do so. You want to save the playlist up there, you can do so. It's just up there. We'll leave it there for now. I hope it helped in some way, and yeah, this video will remain public, so you can always come back and watch it, and then we'll, leave it there. So, hope it helps, and take care for now. Thanks for watching, and those that may have watched during the live premiere, that's appreciated. I'll see you next time. Goodbye, good night for now.